Ciaara, we got Yeadon on the line. What do you want to ask him?
Yeah, I'm focused on acquisitions for my team. And so what comes to mind for me is, building a relationship with brokers. But at the same time, is that all I should be focusing on? Or should I also be calling apartment owners and trying to do it that way? And, so what are your suggestions on that?
Yes.
Yes is the answer. Yes to both.
I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this podcast is different than everything else out there. I bring together a new and an experienced investor on each episode, and I let the aspiring investor ask the questions that they need answered. So if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably will have the exact same questions. Now, before we get to this episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and that little bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe, and I'm very excited for today's show. We got two amazing guests on the line with us today. We got Yeadon Smith, our experienced investor today, and Ciaara Hoffmann, who's our aspiring investor. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. Very glad to be here.
And
thanks so much, Brian.
Absolutely. And incidentally, both Yeadon and I are going to be on Ciaara's podcast soon. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure, Ciaara, but definitely check us out. We're both recording in the next week. So that said, Yeadon, you're up to bat first. Let's talk a little bit about your background. Tell us about yourself and give us an idea of who you are.
Yeadon Smith here, live just outside Charleston, South Carolina. I've been doing multifamily syndication for 4 years, 2023. So 2019. When I got started. It's my full-time gig doing multifamily syndication, and that's what I do day in, day out. I've been doing reports just this morning and getting reports sent out to investors. Before I did multifamily syndication, I've been in real estate since 2014.
Yep.
Started my career in real estate as a general agent with a local company. Mm-hmm. After a couple of years of that, got my broker's license, hung out my own shingle, just a boutique, me, my brother working with me. And then I think it was 2018 when my first cousin Jennings and I partnered together to start doing property management. Because everyone who's in real estate as an agent is tied to the transactional hamster wheel, right? Yeah. It's 100% transactional. You're a high paid freelancer trying to build a business that, drives traffic to help you brokerage a deal. But as soon as you close the deal, you got to go find your next client. You're always searching for clients. There's almost no sort of recurring revenue being an agent.
Yeah.
We started a property management company because we were looking for how can we create recurring revenue. Property management seemed like it would be a good fit for us since I had the real estate license. Jennings was, looking at a real estate career type thing. And that's how we got started with the property management side.
Yeah. I was going to say, somebody on the show came on recently and said a real estate agent, once you close on a deal, it's like you're unemployed again, and you have to hustle to find your next one. And I can appreciate that. So you and your brother started a property management company, go from there.
Yep. So first cousin. Started, people think we're brothers regularly. It's a common thing. We just roll with it these days. But yeah, we started a property management company. And then my cousin Jennings, he'd been studying syndication and commercial real estate for years at this point. I didn't know anything about it. I just thought, okay, we're just managing property, collecting 8, 10, 12%, whatever we could collecting as management commission. He said, Yeadon, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to buy our own apartments. And I'm like, okay. Wow. Our last name is Smith, not Bezos, Buffett, Trump, any of these guys, Buffett, cousins from small town, South Carolina. I'm not sure we're actually going to do this, Jennings, but I started studying the courses that he had bought online, started studying the courses like, okay, let's see what happens. We started telling people what we were doing, shifting from looking for owners that we could manage to owners that we could talk to about purchasing their property. Studied online, and we just started telling people. We went to a conference in, I think, May of 2020, Commercial Empire with Tim Bratz. I'll never forget. We started studying Michael Blanc's syndication model, and I couldn't get his spreadsheet to turn green with anything that I looked at. For any of you listeners out there, if you're familiar with the ultimate deal analyzer syndicator analyzer, it's a great spreadsheet. I couldn't get it to turn green. And Jennings was like, hey, let's go to this guy's conference. He has an inverse model where the syndicators keep a larger piece of the pie. The investors get a smaller piece of the pie. I'm like, that sounds great. He's like, the conference is $5,000. I'm like, that sounds stupid. Why would anybody invest in a deal like that? Mostly because I didn't want to invest $5,000 plus travel and meals and lodging to go learn something that like, I don't know if this is going to work.
When you add everything else up, it's like, it's not $5,000, it's like $7,000 or $8,000 because everything else goes along with it. Yeah, absolutely.
It was not cheap for us to get there. But I thought, you know what? Let's go. So at least I can close this window and then we can move on with our lives. We went and we did learn Tim's model, the Bratz model of syndication, value add, heavy lift type thing, which actually I developed a spreadsheet like there in real time as he was going through how he analyzes deals. I'm like, this deal that didn't fit with Michael Blanc's traditional syndication model fit with the value add heavy lift of the Bratz model. I'm like, oh my gosh, we might have a deal. But more valuable than that was being at a conference that was such a high ticket. We got credibility just being in the room with other syndicators and other operators.
Yeah.
You know, you're not spending $5,000 on a conference. You're not going to any conferences really, unless you are serious about investing in yourself, making a commitment to yourself. And at that conference, we met the team that ended up being our loan sponsor team.
Yeah.
That helped us close, you know, almost all of our deals so far. They helped us get our first deal closed, second deal, third deal. We were off to the races. Fast forward to where we are now with a portfolio of 1,000 apartment units, 500-ish self-storage units, and now we give back. Now we teach people how to do this.
Yeah.
So it was a journey from brokerage to management to syndication.
Nice
for me.
Nice. And something you mentioned about that big ticket thing, I've noticed this before, but a lot of times that big ticket cost separates people who are really going to take action from a lot of tire kickers. So when you get
absolutely right,
doors,
absolutely,
it takes a little bit of, you got to want it. It takes a little bit of, you have to be a little more committed to write a $5,000 check than maybe a $300 check for a conference. And I think that that raises the commitment level inside. And the same can be true of your high ticket coaching programs as well, is a certain amount of commitments required just to actually do that. So that said, something I really, really like, I'm part of your My First Million in Multifamily Facebook community. When did you guys start that? And what's like the secret to your success? Because it's one of the more active Facebook groups I've seen.
We started that group 2 years ago, I think, maybe 3. I can't remember the timeline because the years have kind of all gotten squished together because of the pandemic and the lockdowns and everything. But we started the group in October or November, one of the years, 2 or 3 years ago, I think 3 years ago. And initially we started the group thing like, okay, don't be a secret agent. Tell people what you're doing. Let's just start a Facebook group and start talking on a weekly basis about what syndication is, how it works, lessons we've learned. And part of it was like, we want to expand our network so we can find more deals, so then we can find more investors. That was the motivation behind starting the Facebook group. After about 5 months, it just kind of exploded.
Yeah.
And really the growth of that large group, now I think we have 25,000 some odd 100 members in that Facebook group. It's a free group. It's a great place to start if you're looking to get started. But we started that group. Every week we were doing 2 live streams into the group every week. One was just us talking. One we'd have a guest and interview them about their experiences. And one of our mentors who helped us with our education platform, he asked us once, I was like, Yeadon, do you guys even know why you guys are growing so fast? I'm like, well, I thought I did until you asked it that way. And now I don't know. He said, it's because y'all are, these are his words. He's like, because y'all are not pretentious. You're not putting on airs. You're just cousins talking about what you're doing. It was like a market demand. We were filling a need that we didn't even realize existed in the market for just how you get started in this business, things to watch out for, lessons we're learning, how to grow, how to expand your network. And then the next thing we knew, people were asking us, when are you guys going to come out with education materials? So we built that out. And then the next question was, when are you guys going to come out with mentoring and accountability? I'm like, oh, okay, let's build that out. And now we have our mentoring program. We call it the deal room, where we take people through the process it takes to raise capital, find deals, find a team, close your first deal.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. Sounds like a great progression. And, like I said, it is a very active group. And
and you know what? One other thing, we heavily curate that group. It's like we lock down spam, we lock down junk, we lock things down. So it's we work every week diligently filtering through spam, junk, nonsense. And like, no, I'm not interested in talking with Jim Falafel, who's an expert on crypto and is going to make you $300 a day. Like, nope, you're out. One strike, you're gone.
Yeah. Well, I will say I have been able to find several guests for this podcast from that Facebook group, and thanks for letting those posts through at least. Hopefully it adds value and gives people opportunities. But I think that's where both of you guys responded. But anyway, I think it is a great group, one of the more active Facebook groups that I've seen, and so congratulations for the success you've had so far with that. Well, speaking of deal rooms, let's talk about a deal or two you guys have done. So pick your first or your favorite and walk us through, what one of your deals looks like.
Talk about our very first deal. Our very first deal was an 18-unit complex here in our local market, just outside Charleston, town called Monk's Corner. So Monk's Corner, it's about the size that you would imagine, not big.
Yep.
And we found this property. I was actively networking as a property manager through networking organizations. I was in a group called BNI, Business Networking International. And I had shifted from looking for clients to looking for properties. So every week when it was my turn to talk, this is like a referral group, industry exclusive. So I would start talking like, hey, we do property management, but what we're looking for is apartment owners that we can talk to about buying their apartments. And the commercial contractor in the group, who actually is my neighbor, he lives around the corner in my neighborhood now. At that time, he was like, look, I have a contact who does flooring, owns a flooring company here locally. He owns some multifamily. His family just got this place under contract, but they're changing directions. They're using money to buy their, build their dream retirement house instead of closing this deal. Are y'all interested in talking with him? I'm like, yes, we are. Very interested. So we talked with him. He had it under contract, 18 units under contract for, I think, $740,000. We started the conversation. And long story short, that deal, he came in, he found the deal. So we gave him, he ended up getting 5% equity. Instead of a finder's fee of cash, he opted for taking an equity position in the deal. So he came on board. He got his stake of equity. Jennings and I, we reached out to the loan sponsor team that we had met at this conference, the Commercial Empire Conference. Hey guys, we have this. We're not sure if it's a deal or not. We think so. We're running numbers. They flew down. They looked at it with us. 18 units, vintage, late 70s, early 80s, like thick green carpet, wallboard paneling. But these were giant units, like a one-bedroom unit, 700 plus square feet. Like these are really big units. The owner had built them himself. His dad had started the construction. He had finished the construction. They're on wells and septic service out in the country. And we're like, okay, let's look at this. It needed 200,000 of CapEx, the capital improvements for, we ripping out all the stuff that was old, putting new stuff in, dealing with some roofs, dealing with some other issues that were going on. And our loan sponsor team, the relationship we built with them, they raised the capital. They had the investors for the deal. We raised $250,000 for this deal that from investors they brought in. We closed on it. So our all-in cost is like $950,000. We kept the management in-house. We were still doing property management. We're like, this is 18 units. We can handle this. And it was a really good learning experience because I managed the construction. As units would come vacant, I would coordinate with the vendors for paint, flooring, counters, lights, all that stuff, and get stuff working. Then we would market the property, put tenants in place. It took us about 18 months to go through the entire property, unit by unit. And I'll never forget this. Going on site with our property manager, who worked for us at the time, going around just telling people, because we figured out the spreadsheet on like, okay, we're going to take 3 units at a time and work on them. And I still remember the manager was knocking on doors, talking to people, saying, hey, you're paying $500 a month in rent. Market rent is $900. So it's going to $900. If you want new floors, want new appliances, let us know. Otherwise, you have to move. I was around the corner from one of the buildings, and I just heard like in higher escalation, $900. I'm like, she's not staying. That tenant is not. But it was like the property wasn't generating enough revenue
Mhm.
to actually maintain it and keep it current and keep
Yeah.
the things nice. Fix subfloors that were rotting, air conditioners that were going bad, roofs that were leaking.
Mhm.
So, getting to $900 a month in rent was not this greedy cash grab. It's like this property needs hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it viable.
Yep.
So we turned over the tenant base. We even actually created a 19th unit out of unused space. It was just kind of being used for storage. We spent, I think, $60,000 to create another unit that now rents for $900 a month.
Mhm.
So it was a great deal. Now it's 19 units. We actually just replaced a well out there. And wells are not cheap. Goodness gracious. And now we're working on the septic system to making sure we have some issues with there. So in inspecting them one by one to figure out which one needs to be replaced, which ones are good.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing we're charging $900 a month in rent, because we spent $30,000 on a well. We're going to spend another $30,000 on septic systems.
Yep.
We refinanced it. It appraised for, I think, 1.75 million.
Nice.
We got long-term agency debt on it back when rates were, dirt cheap.
Mhm.
And we refinanced it for, I think, 1.15.
Mhm.
So we even pulled out
All your
$150,000. We pulled out all the cash for the investors.
Mhm.
Pulled out a little bit of cash on top of that. Everybody got some. And now the property's operating,
Mhm.
just like
ATM
it's at 100% occupancy.
Yeah. Yeah. And you bring
it's an ATM machine that's not paying anything right now because of the well and the septics.
Yeah. But I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, there has to be financial incentive. And I think a lot of longtime owners, they get to the point where all of these bills start stacking up. And it's, if you're an owner and you've got a $30,000 well and a $30,000 septic, where are you going to get the money? There has to be a financial incentive for somebody to come in and fix all those things. Otherwise, all the housing in the nation, would just basically go to crap. So I think
if you're not charging market rent,
then
you're not going to be able to pay market repair when the bill comes due.
Absolutely.
Right. My parents got a well drilled by the same well company back in 1999 or 98, back when everybody's freaking out about Y2K. So they put a well in their property. And I think it was under $10,000. Now, granted, this is a residential well. But for a commercial well, we had to get a bigger well, diameter, several tanks, commercial pump, $26,000 just for the well, and then the well shed and the electrician and the plumber. So $30,000 for the well. Actually, probably $35,000 for the well, all in. And if you're not charging market rate, there is no money to pay for that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And nobody wins.
Yeah, and we come in a lot of times, and some people make the comments, oh, big greedy landlords. If you're bringing it up to market rent, I mean, that's not greed. That's where it should be. That's where the ideal price is. And I mean, we've raised rents on a handful of people who've screamed and cussed at our property managers, not us, fortunately, and then come in the next day to sign the lease. And it's market. If you're at market rates. What typically happens, and this has happened to us dozens of times, tenants are, I don't want to pay that increase. And they go out and they start looking for stuff everywhere else. And then they come back and say, this is
Can I sign a 2-year lease?
Yeah, exactly. They're like, this is still the best deal I can find. I'm going to stay here. And that's the idea of market rates. I mean, if a landlord isn't charging market rates, it might be a break for a little while, but eventually, someone's gonna have to pay the piper. Eventually, that's that rent holiday is gonna go away. But anyway, one question I like to ask everybody, and it's kind of a motivation question. What is your big burning why? What are you trying to accomplish with your multifamily investing?
When I started, my why was I have to get out of chasing transactions. As a realtor, as a broker, like everybody I knew had a dollar sign on their back. Like everybody I knew was a potential transaction. And I felt pressure to maintain relationships with everybody, not from hey, I really love you and want to hang out with you. It was like, I need to maintain my relationship with you because at some point you're going to sell your house and I want to be the guy that gets the commission check because I got bills to pay. And seeing a future where the asset was generating recurring revenue, I can't quite call it passive because there's still work to do,
Yeah.
But you do the work once and then you maintain the work with a much less effort, and the money continues to be generated. That's how I got started. Now, like, my why is to the point where, okay, my retirement is done. 20 years from now, all these properties are going to be worth twice as much. The equity is going to be huge. Like, my retirement is I can check that box. But now it's the factor of who in my life, if my mom were to call me and say, Yeadon, I need surgery and it's going to cost $300,000. I want to be at the point where I can write that check and not blink. What good can I do with the cash flow? What good can I do with the assets that I couldn't do before? I was in youth ministry for a decade. And before that, I was on, I raised money as a missionary building houses and working in an orphanage in Mexico. And like, money is the muscle of ministry.
It is.
Whether it's a religious organization or a non-religious organization, like, money is the muscle that drives the nonprofits of the world. And I want to be able to contribute in a serious way to the organizations that are making the world a better place.
Yeah. I served a mission for my church, gosh, it's in the 90s. It's been a while. I've got some gray in my beard right now. I was still young and strong. I'm still strong now, but I'm not stronger now. But I was able to do it because somebody in our church paid for it. My family didn't have the capability to pay for, 2 years worth of a mission, but somebody in my church did. They were able to write that check. And I think at the time, the going rate was, $10,000 for a 2-year mission is what you had to bring to the table. And just like you said, I mean, it's something that I look at that, I want to be able to fund other people's stuff. When somebody's going through a hard time, brother, sister, cousin, who cares who it is, I want to be able to write that check and fix anything that money can fix. Can't fix everything, but it can.
We have a saying in my family: any problem that can be solved with money is not really a problem. Now, it's twofold, because one, if you don't have the money to solve it, it's a problem.
Right.
But then one step further is some things you cannot solve with money. You just can't. So, like, those are the real problems in life.
Yeah.
Not, man, my transmission died and I need $1,500 to fix my car. That's a huge problem if you don't have $1,500. But if you can fix your car, then the problems with relationships, with people that you love, with things that money is not the solution for.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Appreciate you sharing that. So last question for you. And that question is, what's next?
What's next? Well, last year, Jennings and I, we went through disposition on 2 properties that we sold. We closed on another property, actually partnered with one of our deal room members who found it. And we sponsored the loan and brought the investors to the deal. We closed on that in Ohio. This year, we're focused on, okay, we haven't identified our next acquisition yet. We're still in acquisition mode, but we're really focusing on how can we streamline the My First Million deal room to make the process smoother, to make it easier and more predictable for students who come in to close their first deal. We know the process and how to get into a deal, how to raise capital, how to find deals, how to talk to brokers. So we're working on continuing to streamline that process to make it even better and better.
Awesome. Well, best of luck to you as you streamline that. It's one of my favorite words. My company is Streamline Capital. So anytime anybody brings up the word, I'm like, streamline, nice. Love it. They're unintentionally promoting me, but anyway, thanks for that. And all right, we're going to switch gears. And Ciaara, how's it going today?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
Absolutely. And thanks for being on the show today, by the way. So do us a favor and tell us about yourself.
Absolutely. So Ciaara Hoffmann, I started before getting into multifamily. I was in the residential mortgage business. So I worked my way up to a management position. I was making a ton of money, especially just through COVID, just printing money basically during that time. Obviously, we know what happened when rates started to go up last year. The mortgage industry really took a dive, and so did all of our paychecks. So I went from making multiple 6 figures at that time down to maybe 60, 70 grand a year, almost overnight. It just felt like it happened so quickly. And it was everyone in the industry. You couldn't even go to another company because everyone was experiencing the same thing. And so the company that I was at just wasn't prepared for a market shift. And that was pretty clear at that time. Now, I had been doing commercial kind of part-time. I joined a mentorship in May of last year. So I had been kind of learning about it and getting more into it. And I knew for a long time that I wanted to do commercial real estate. And so what I decided to do was, rather than try to find another W-2, I just jumped into multifamily full time because I had a good nest egg saved up and I had some time to really crush it. So that's what I'm doing now.
Awesome. Awesome. You're out there crushing it. So I love to hear that. So, awesome. So full time right now, couple years of plenty where you're making lots of money. Is that what's giving you the ability to do this full time right now? Or
well, it's a combination of, I just had a good amount of money saved up from making pretty good paychecks during those couple years in COVID. And then also my husband, he works as well. So that helps out.
Yeah, that does help. That does help. So yeah, absolutely. So you're in full time working to get some deals closed. I love it. So one question I ask everybody, and you get it the same way. What's your motivation for doing this? What's your big burning why?
Me and my husband, we have huge goals, mainly to travel. So he has 2 kids.
Okay.
They're 16 and 14 right now. So in 4.5 years, when they're moved out, our goal is to just be perpetual travelers and just be, on the road all the time, because that's our thing. We love to travel. I've been to 25 countries so far. And so I told them, let's go to a new country every year. That's what I want to do, at least one every year.
Yeah.
So travel is really big on our list.
What's your favorite country so far?
Greece would be my number 1.
Okay.
And close behind that is basically any place in the Mediterranean. So Italy and France. Those are kind of the best places for me. We're actually going back there in September.
Okay.
We have a cruise planned. So I'll be in the Mediterranean again.
Okay. So the Med countries are your favorite. That's one area I've never been to. I've done a lot of travel, Middle East, Southeast Asia, South America, but maybe my next trip will have to be Mediterranean.
Yeah, definitely recommend that.
Yeah, I love that goal though. New country every year. I actually pulled out my passport. It's about to expire. I haven't gotten a new stamp in 3 years. So
oh yeah.
I know, right? So, but there we go.
Well, that's what happens when COVID happens. I haven't been able to leave North America for the last, well, actually, I haven't left North America since me and my husband have been together. It's just been, we were long distance. I lived in Canada. He lived down here. So we traveled a lot to see each other at the time. And then after we got married and I moved down here, I couldn't leave the country because I was waiting for my green card. And so I wasn't allowed to leave the country. And then after that, COVID hit. So obviously now's the time that we're going to be going out of the country.
My last international trip was January 2020, 2 months before they shut everything down. And I was traveling with a friend and we were kind of, this may sound really insensitive, but I thought COVID was just another media scare, and we were making fun of people on the airplane that were wearing masks in January, Yeah, well, I guess we got that one wrong. But anyway, so there we go. So hey, anyway, here comes my favorite part of the show. Ciaara, we got Yeadon on the line. What do you want to ask him?
Yeah. Right now, I'm really just trying to dial in and focus on the activities that are going to give me the most results. I'm rereading the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller. And I just want to really focus on, what is going to give me the most results? Because, the question that he asks you in there is, what is the one thing I can do right now that would make everything else easier or unnecessary? Right. And I'm focused on acquisitions for my team. And so what comes to mind for me is, building a relationship with brokers. But at the same time, is that all I should be focusing on? Or should I also be calling apartment owners and trying to do it that way? And, so what are your suggestions on that?
Yes.
Yes is the answer. Yes to both.
When Jennings and I, when we started doing syndication, the financial environment, the real estate environment was completely different. We did not have a background of single family wholesalers, single family flippers. We were not good at cold calling, text messages, mailers. We didn't have any of that. We focused on the brokers. We focused on just casting our net as wide as we could with people that we were talking to. Like, somebody knows an apartment owner that is stressed out and is ready to sell. And we just need to make that connection with that person. You're like, hey, you know what? You don't like your apartment complex anymore. You've been talking about selling. Would you like an offer? I know some guys that are making offers on apartment complexes. And when I have looked back at our portfolio has come mostly from brokers. From brokers where we get it like pre-market deal, where they're working on the package and working on it with like, oh my gosh, Yeadon and Jennings buy stuff like this. And we're the first people to know about it. Now, having said that, we get access to that because we have a track record and because we close deals and we know what we're doing. Talking with brokers is the cheapest way to find out about deals. It's the cheapest way to find out about off-market deals because you're not spending money with bird dogging down LLCs, skip tracing, blasting out text messages, having a VA handle them until you get on the call to close them. We did not go that route. You can go that route, but it is a lot of work to set up those systems.
Yeah.
The fastest way with the least cost is direct to brokers, talking with the broker, because that's what they're doing day in, day out. They're on the hunt for their next transaction. They're probably the person that sold the property to the owner.
Yeah.
And they're going to be the group that the owner calls was like, you know what? I've owned it for 5 years. I'm ready for my next thing. They call the broker first.
Yeah.
So building relationships with brokers has paid massive dividends for us. At the same time, if all you do is one thing in this industry, oftentimes you're just going to kind of run into a dead end because unlike single family, you can't do a multifamily deal on your own. You got to have a loan sponsor. You got to have massive amounts of capital. You got to be able to underwrite and analyze. You got to know what you're doing with due diligence, all these different things. And I know it's going to come as no surprise to you, Ciaara, because you're already in our system where we talk about how to find deals.
Yeah.
Talking with brokers is one of the best things you can do to starting out. The other thing is finding mom and pop investors. Finding one-off investors, that are going to invest at $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 chunks. Because as you build up your investor database, as you build up your skill of talking with investors, it increases your confidence talking with brokers and vice versa, right? As you're talking with brokers, as you're analyzing deals, it builds up your confidence of talking confidently with investors about what a deal looks like, why it's a bad deal, why it's a safe deal, why it's a good deal. I hate to say there are two things, but I really think there are two things to do at the same time: finding money, finding deals. Because if you're doing just one without the other one, what'll happen is you'll find a deal and it'd be like a dog that, chasing the car in the street. It's like, I caught the car. Now what? What do I do with it without having the capital to back it up and close it? If you find capital, but you don't know how to talk with brokers to find a deal, then you'll have a database of capital, but it'll shrink over time because there's nowhere for the capital to go. The capital will go somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing that I'll add to that, there's a certain range of deals where you can go direct to owner, and it's different everywhere you live. Where I'm at, we're talking, 12 units and less. In South Carolina, I've got a lot of properties in South Carolina. Maybe it's closer to 20, 25 units or like maybe 30. Well, we've got a 32 unit direct from owner there, but there's a certain space where mom and pops will listen to you. But there comes a number, and it's not a, hard and fast number, where 98% of everything above that line is brokered. Okay. And it's what Yeadon says, the broker sold them the property. And so when they want to sell it, they want the best and highest price. And they know the best way to do that is through a broker. So the other thing that I think you're doing, and just really adding to what Yeadon said, very thorough, complete answer, is when you're dealing with brokers, you're leveraging their time. Now instead of, if you've got time to make 10 phone calls a day, you can call 10 owners or you can call 10 brokers. All right. And I think calling the 10 brokers is a more efficient use of your time because each one of these brokers is going to have a long list of potential owners that they can call on your behalf. And we had this light bulb moment once talking with a broker where he said, "What's your buy criteria?" And we told him our buy criteria, and he told us this. He's like, "I'm going to go down my list of owners that meet this criteria and see if I can find something for you." And that was the first time I looked at brokers as somebody who can work for me. It takes, I think Yeadon mentioned this as well. I mean, you have to have a little bit of credibility for them to be able to do it. You have to be a closer, having your team lined up, having your capital lined up, having your sponsor lined up. You need to have that taken care of before most brokers are going to do that for you.
Perfect. Thank you guys for sharing.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, next question that I have actually has to do with your community that you've built, My First Million in Multifamily, and just what's the biggest benefit that you found from building out that community? Because I'm, contemplating maybe doing something, not a Facebook group, but just sending people somewhere from my podcast and just kind of having more of an interaction with people versus just, throwing podcasts out there. What would you say is the biggest benefit that you've got from building that community, and has it been worth all the effort and time that you've put into it?
Oh, that is a great question. And one, yes, it has been worth all the effort and time. I don't even know how many hundreds of hours we've spent building that community out. I'll go to the axiom that we are taught from an early age, which is actually wrong. The phrase is, and don't overthink it, just fill in the blank. It's not what you know, it's
Who?
Who you know.
It's who you know. But that's wrong. You got to take it one step further. It's not what you know, and it's not who you know. It's who knows you. That's the piece. Most people stop, like, they go to a networking thing, they just pass out their business cards like they're Pez from a Pez dispenser. And like, I passed out 100 business cards and I made 100 new contacts. Like, no, you didn't. That business card is going to end up as lint in their dryer.
Mhm.
I know, because that's what happens to me. I'm like, oh shoot, I hope none of these were something I actually needed, because now it's just a wad of lint in my dress pants coming out of the dryer. By having consistent communication, whether it's through an email list, a Facebook group, just a Facebook profile, Instagram, LinkedIn, regardless of what it is, by having that consistent communication where when somebody finds what you're talking about, like, oh, I really like what Ciara's talking about. I like how she thinks. What else of hers can I find to listen to read, to consume? By having that content out there, you build a network of people that know you, even if you don't actually know them personally. They know who you are. They recognize you're in the space. Another formula that I got from my networking days, Business Networking International, their formula is VCP. Visibility plus credibility equals profitability. It meshes exactly with, it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. The more visible you are and the more consistent you are, you start building that credibility with people that are listening to you, that are watching you from afar. I learned, I don't know how it works in mortgage brokering, but I know when I got started in real estate, the best thing I heard was the people that you think will work with you won't.
Mhm.
And the people that you don't even know are out there watching you, they'll call you out of the blue. I saw you're in real estate. I need to sell my house. It's the same thing with finding investors. It's the same thing with apartment owners. It's like the people that you think are like, oh my gosh, this is a slam dunk for this person to invest in this
So
deal.
true.
They won't. The person that's been watching you for 6 months and, they're like, hey man, I have, like, how do you have $100,000? Like I have $100,000 that I want to invest in a deal with you. Like, okay. I never would have pegged you as a commercial real estate investor, but here we are.
Yeah.
So building an audience at whatever level is valuable.
Yeah.
I don't regret it at all.
I agree. And I mean, I wish I had a Facebook group as productive as that one. I've tried building networks and I have a substantial one, but if you're trying to build that, I think one thing you have to do is just be consistent. Like, Yeadon and Jennings have done is, twice, I think he said twice a week, they're going in there and doing Facebook lives, and so every Wednesday, it takes time to build it, but just be consistent. And that's something that I struggle with the most is the consistency, but be consistent. It takes time to build. It takes time for people to start, creating their own conversation, and eventually you'll get there.
Mhm.
That said, we are pretty much out of time. So one last question for each of you. Yeadon, you go first. How can listeners learn more about you?
We're pretty easy to find. You can find us on Facebook, My First Million in Multifamily. That's our big Facebook group. It is a group where you got to request access to join, agree to the group rules, give us your email address. We send out the recordings of our Wednesday show. We don't spam people. We just send them the content that they're already seen in the Facebook group. You can find us online there. For our deal room program, real simple, getinthedealroom.com.
All right.
You can schedule a consultation call with Jennings and me to learn more about the deal room, see if it's a fit for where you are in real estate, see if it's something that can help you get in your first deal.
All right. Sounds good. And we're going to put those in the show notes if you don't mind. I'll put a link to the Facebook group as well. So if anybody wants access to that, check out the show notes. We got the link to getinthedealroom.com and a link to the Facebook My First Million in Multifamily group. Ciara, same question for you. How can listeners learn more about you?
So number one would be to check out my podcast, Commercial Real Estate Bosses, which both of you are going to be guests on here pretty soon.
Awesome.
So check out those episodes. Other place to contact me is I'm most active on Facebook. So my social handle across Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube would be CRE Bosses. So you can find me that way.
All right. Awesome. And we will put that in the show notes as well, so people can get in contact with you who want to get in contact with you. So, and then definitely check out the Commercial Real Estate Bosses podcast. Yeadon and I are both going to be on it. So if you enjoyed this show, I'm sure you're going to enjoy, both of those as well. So that said, thanks guys for coming on the show today. Very much appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Ciara.
Thank you both.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community, the Tribe of Titans, yet, you are missing out. So get yourself 30 days free by clicking the link below in the description, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.